Welcome to the Resilient Kids podcast. I'm delighted to be back here sharing with you conversations with parents that help you to be the best parent that you can be. I would like to take this opportunity also to say thank you to all of those of you who've been listening. And in the 12 weeks since we have been on air, we have managed to get ourselves into 12 different countries, which is absolutely exciting. So let's sit back and enjoy this episode of the Resilient Kids podcast. So good morning, and it's lovely to be here with you today, Judith. I've known Judith now for a few years, and we have spent 5 days together at a How Much is Too Much retreat. But I'm really interested to talk with you today about the concerns that you have or the topics that are interesting for you. So I'd like to welcome you and ask you to introduce yourself, Judith.
Thanks, Madeleine. It's fantastic to be here today. So I'm Judith, and I live in Wellington with my husband and 2 teen boys and a very, very demanding cat. I also am qualifying as a psychologist, and I run a business teaching parents how to get their picky eaters eating.
And you do such a good job, and I know that you're actually becoming internationally famous, so this is pretty cool to have you here and to have your work being out into the world. So I'm really grateful for that. And because you're such a thought leader, I thought it would be really helpful for our listeners to hear what's been on your mind in relation to your kids. So what do you think you'd like to talk about today, Judith?
One thing I did want to preface the conversation with was around privilege, only because everything that I sort of say, think, and do is really a product of my privilege, and my privilege in turn extends to my boys, except they have an extra one because I'm female and they're male. But I think it's really important that I do say that, because everything that I say is framed within that privilege that has been extended to me, and that I'm very grateful to have.
Okay, thank you for that. And so let's hear what you've got to talk about today.
Well, it's interesting because when you asked me, what would I like to talk about, I was, sort of thinking through the big challenges we have when we have teenagers, and I think the small children, little problems, and big children, big problems is quite a good it's quite a good phrase, because as children age, some of the situations they find themselves in, some of the challenges they come across are really quite complex, and also can be quite concerning, both from their point of view and from the point of view as the parent. I think one thing I've noticed, and I don't know how much of this is a teen thing and how much this is a modern world challenge, is that there's a lot of uncertainty about the future for teens, and that makes things quite challenging for them, because and it's a multifaceted issue, but the way that the world is very different than the way it was when I was their age, and that was quite a few moons ago. But in my age, in my sort of generation, then if you were really academic, then you would go to university. If you were really technical, you'd go to tech college and become a plumber or carpenter or whatever it might be. And if you were just interested in earning money, you go get a job in the supermarket or be a laborer or whatever it might be. But now it's become quite muddied, because going to university is now really expensive. Just because you've got a university education doesn't guarantee you a job. And even if you do get a job, you may not be earning as much as someone else who is, doing something on Google or YouTube or whatever it might be. And if you do just want to go and earn money, often you're stuck in a never-ending fight just to put food on the table after you've paid your rent. And it's just a really different world. And I think that a lot of the teens recognize that. And then we sort of introduce all the other additional challenges of the modern world, in that, in my parents' generation, you got a job and you were there for 50 years and then you retired. Now, you might have a job for 6 months and then another job and another job and another job, and nothing's sort of guaranteed. And also, I guess just with the price of housing, and especially in New Zealand, like, how the heck are you going to be able to afford to live anywhere that's within cooey of a central city? And of course, if you're young, where do you want to go? You want to go you don't want to be stuck out in a rural area if you're a 20-something. So, I think all of those things just contribute to a lot of uncertainty and a lot of confusion about, where to go.
And I suppose the bigger picture of global warming, the issue around the pandemic, all of those things to add to this space of uncertainty. So knowing that you've got a really good brain, what have you done already to understand how to support our teenagers and to support yourself as a parent to maneuver your way through this uncertainty? What do you already know about it?
Well, actually, I'm a really sort of, I guess I'm probably a very bad and a very good role model, in that I did sort of follow the academic path and went to university, but then did my degree and have never used it. And then I did nothing with my degree or anything that was sort of along a conventional sort of academic path. And I really started from the moment I left university. I ran businesses and built businesses and did that on my own bat and have done a whole variety of, weird and wonderful things, looking for what I was passionate about and what I was excited about, until I found in my early 40s that my passion was around, food and nutrition for children, and that sort of, determined where I've gone since then. And my eldest son always wanted to be a doctor from the time he was 5 through to the time he was 17. But then suddenly at the beginning of year 13, he went, I just don't think this is what I want to do. I don't think I want to spend the next 6 to 8 years just studying. I just don't think that's my path. And he said, I think I want to do what you did and just follow my passion. And so half of me went, fantastic. And half of me went, oh no, what have I done? And so now he's in a bit of a quandary, because after having this really fixed path and this really, this overarching goal and knowing exactly which courses he needed to take, and, suddenly he's adrift and he just doesn't really know. And so that's quite disconcerting if you've had a goal and now you no longer have a goal. And I think for me, I'm very goal driven. So once I've got a goal in front of me, I am the happiest person, because then it's just, well, doesn't matter what it takes. I just channel everything towards that goal. But if I'm not quite sure where I'm going, that's far more difficult.
Yeah, but isn't that wonderful that he's able to come and talk to you and say, actually, that dream or that thought that I had, I don't want to pursue it anymore. And, I can remember talking to some mid-20-year-old who had gone off to university, had tried one degree, didn't like it, tried another degree, didn't like it, ended up leaving with over $30,000 student loan, and ended up working in a labouring role, and completely undone in himself, because he felt that he'd failed everybody and felt he'd failed himself. And so I'm really interested in your thinking about what research have you done that helps your child navigate this uncertainty?
So I don't know if I've necessarily done the research, but what I thought was that actually, if I went back to my teenage years, I went to university and I did a geography degree. Why did I do a geography degree? Because it was my favorite subject and I was good at it. And it seemed like, well, I didn't really have any other, ideas. So that seemed like a great idea. And then when I left university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went traveling. And so my life sort of unfolded sort of organically. But at the same time, because I am very goal driven, I was always thinking, what do I like? What can I do? And I was always looking for opportunities, and I was always looking for ways that I could do more and do more exciting things. And I think my first son is very much like that. So a lot of it's been sitting down and saying, well, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at this stage what you do. I think you should just say, I want to do this. Put your energy into it, see how it goes. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, you know what? If you're in your late teens, your early 20s, it's a great time to learn about life. And it's a great time to make mistakes and really just find out who you are in the world. And I think it's just as important to figure out what you don't want to do as to figure out what you do want to do. And he did 6 months in a supermarket, and he absolutely loved it because he got mentored. So he learned the ordering, and he was in charge of his division, and he was so excited. And then they let him down, and it was such a shock. But it was such a good lesson. And so now he's been totally put off supermarkets. And he's also appreciated that for him, that's not his life path, because he sees how many hours he would have to put in to have the money to survive. So all of these things, I think, are just so valuable for teenagers. Just these little things that we do along the way. It's where you learn your lessons.
So the other thing that I'm hearing that you're doing is you're having conversations and you're giving permission to try things and to fail and to recognize that actually those moments of upset and distress are learning opportunities for resilience. And for, as you said, knowing exactly what it is that you don't want to do is just as important as being clear about what you do want to do. And until you try things, you don't necessarily know.
Absolutely. But also, I think having a job is just a critical part of this, because having a job teaches you, well, you need to go in at times that are not convenient for you, and you need to do things that you really don't want to do, but that's part of the job. And you need to work with people who you don't particularly enjoy, spending time with. And when you become a bit of a supervisor, as he did, then you have to tell other people what to do. And sometimes, that can raise all sorts of challenges and issues. And so all of those things are so valuable. And I think that, if I had any advice for parents of teens, it's, make sure that they go and get a job, because there's so many lessons to be learned in having a job of whatever type.
Right. And so what do you think is still sitting there for you that isn't quite resolved in your mind around this uncertainty?
Well, my first son, I think he's sort of, got himself sorted. My second son, that's a little bit more difficult, because he's never had a sort of a direction, and he's never had a goal. And watching his older brother, it's always been more difficult for him, because my eldest son was so much on his own path. My second son's like, but I don't know what I want to do. And he's been like this since he was sort of 10, 11, because he's been saying, well, I don't know what I do. And I said, but that's okay. And so now it's really trying to support him so that he comes to a place where he is comfortable just following a path, or, so just where he's feeling some comfort within himself about the choices he's making, because of course he's going into year 11, so now he's making decisions that might have repercussions down the track, because which courses he chooses will determine what he's able to do, down the track. And so I'm really encouraging him to pick subjects that he loves. I just say, just if you like it, just do it.
So again, it's that sense of being able to know what's going on in your kid's brain and their thinking, so that you can let them know, acknowledge the reality that actually it's okay just to be uncertain and not to be sure, but to do the things that you enjoy while you're trying to figure this out, in order for you to be as happy as you possibly can at this time, knowing that as you go through that, you'll learn what you do like and what you don't like.
Well, yes, and my eldest son has actually had to commit to certain subjects because, of course, he wanted to be a doctor, and then he got to this year and went, I'm just hating one of these subjects. And so I said, well, let's change it. So he actually changed in the second term of year 13 because he hated the subjects. And I go, well, that's not productive. Why do something you hate if it's now not necessary? And so he was able to swap, and that took, enormous amounts of pressure, off his shoulders. And so, I felt really sort of, I guess, valuable in that was something that we could really support him to do.
And I'm going back to the topic around uncertainty, and what are strategies that we can share with our kids that might help them to, despite whatever else is going on, know who they are and what's important for them. And one of the things that I think about in this time is kind of the values of the family, and how do you have conversations with your kids about what are the things that your family finds important, whether it's faith-based or whether it's or whatever it is, so that our children have a bit of a compass that they can use that help them to navigate the choices that they might be making, whether it's with the sorry, you go.
No, go. No, I think you're absolutely right that those values are just so critically important. And I think because I work from home, then that's been really easy for me, because they've seen and they've always been involved in my business right from the start. So they've always seen what effort it takes and what's going into it. And so those are all lessons they learn along the way. And then I think from a sort of a wider family values perspective, that it's always been really important to me that, I do have a great relationship with them, because I didn't have great communication with my parents at all through my teen years. We had conflict, and there was very little support. I mean, it's not that they were unsupportive, but we just didn't have the sort of relationship where I could go and talk to them. I'd feel like talking to them. And that was something I really wanted to change when it came to my children. And what I found was, as my eldest became older, of course, he wanted to retreat and he wanted to become more independent. He didn't want to talk to me. And that was something I set out consciously to just, regardless of how he was speaking to me and regardless of what the relationship was, I was determined that we were going to have a relationship where we could have difficult conversations and where we could talk about awkward things, because there are a lot of awkward things come up when we have teenagers. And it hasn't been easy, but we are at the point where we can have those conversations. And then in having those conversations, I think that your family values just automatically become part of those
Right.
conversations.
Because you're demonstrating those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you demonstrate it through the way that you work, and you demonstrate it through the way you interact with other people, and you demonstrate it through the relationship you have with your partner and your friends, and all of those things aren't necessarily overtly stated, but they are very much overt in the way that you behave, and your children absorb a lot more by your role modeling than what you say anyway.
And I'm also noticing you, as you talk, thinking about perseverance and the resilience that you have to continue to come back into a relationship when you're not getting much back initially from, that was me reading between the lines. And so, what was it that enabled you as a parent to continue to have the courage to come back into that conversation, or come back into that relationship, or move towards something that was, not very pleasant?
Well, I think part of it was because I could see that my eldest wasn't very happy in himself, and I knew that I couldn't impact that unless I was inside that, and you can't be inside that if you don't have a really close relationship. And don't get me wrong, we still clash, and it's not all peaches and cream, but we do have a relationship where I can have those difficult conversations with me, and where he can come to me and say, I'm just not feeling great about this, or I'm not quite sure about this, or I've done this, what should I do now? And I think knowing that you've got that parental safety net there, and you've got your independence, and you can do all your things, but if push comes to shove, there's that safety net beneath you, is just so comforting. And I know that if I'd had that as a teen, it probably would have changed a lot of things about, my personality and my life, and my comfort levels and everything else. And so I was just determined to do that. So I set out, and it was my mission. So it's, have a conversation, have a conversation, get rebuffed, have the conversation, get rebuffed, have the conversation, get rebuffed. And it's just a question of saying, this is really important to me. I am going to make it work. I don't care what you think. I'm going to make it work from my side. And it was really interesting. It took about a month before I started to really get any sort of traction. But, I think even he realized, she's not giving up on this. I might as well just,
And I suppose what she's not giving up on this means that actually she really loves me.
Absolutely. And I think that with teens, it's really easy to have the brush off. And I'll quickly tell you a little story, because this was the other thing that was really in the back of my mind the whole time. So I was a nanny in the US when I was 17, and I met with, and I stay close to the family, and I met with one of the sons when he was 30. And he said to me, when I was a teenager, my parents just had no interest with me. They didn't even want me to come for dinner. And, so I just used to go to my room. And then I spoke to the parents, and the parents said, yeah, when he was a teen, he wouldn't even have dinner with us. He used to just go upstairs and go to his room. And so you had these two totally opposing views of the same situation. And I thought, I'm not going to make that mistake. And I do think that teens do often just presume, why are you so angry with me? I'm not angry with you at all. What are you talking about? I'm not angry at all. No, so I always have that in the back of my head, where I don't want him to just come in and go to his room and feel that we don't care. And if I have to keep dragging him out for dinner and dragging him out for dinner and dragging him out for dinner and dragging him out for dinner, I'm just going to keep doing that.
Right. Yeah. So as you're talking to me, what are you thinking about this idea of uncertainty?
the uncertainty is really a part of all of our lives. I mean, even as adults, uncertainty is often there. And in this sort of COVID environment, changing economic situation, I think there's going to be more and more uncertainty for more and more people. And that we just have to learn how to brave through it. And, and I think I've sort of lived a lot of these uncertain times myself, and so I feel that I can from a personal point of view, I do have a lot to sort of say on the topic, and I can really sit in that sort of space and say, I think it'll be okay, but there are certain sort of core, as you say, core values that you've got to have. And it's about not passively going, well, I don't know where I'm going, therefore it's all a waste of time. It's saying, okay, I don't know where I'm going, but I need to earn money, or I need to go forwards, or so how can I make that happen? Okay, I'll follow this path, see how I'm going, and then, well, what's that next step? And so it's having vision, and it's having passion, and it's getting off your bum and just doing things. And I think all of that does come back to where your values are.
And so it's that determination and that hope, and keeping that optimistic frame despite the situation, and having some agency that you can have, and maintaining your own power in order to be able to do that. And the other thing that I'm hearing from you as the parent is that supporting our children to be able to do that by staying in connection and being persistent ourselves as parents, so that we don't give up, and we maintain the hope, and we maintain the optimism.
Absolutely. And really, it's our job. It's our job to have a relationship with our children, not our children's job to have a relationship with us.
That's a pretty powerful thing for us to end on, though, isn't it? What a great quote there, Judith. And we have to be leaders in our family, that's for sure. Yeah, and that's a really important point. So thank you so much for having a conversation with me today. I really appreciate you giving up your time, and I look forward to other conversations in different spaces.
No worries. Thanks, Madeleine. It's been lovely to have a bit of a chat.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me today, and for sharing your fabulous ideas. Remember, if you want some more support, please go to www.resilientkids.org.nz. Reach out. I'm really happy to reply to an email if you're wanting resources, and or to pick up some support through coaching or our online parenting course. Go well, take care, thank you.